A millionaire entered the orphanage like someone walking through a cemetery of dead dreams. He had everything, except what mattered most. Then he saw a girl, her hands stained with grease, her eyes with the intelligence of someone who survived alone. And something inside him broke, because those eyes were the same eyes of the woman he let go 11 years ago. The girl looked up and whispered 2 words that would change everything. Absent Dad. Like this, if it touched your soul, it is more than a click. It is a silent hug among those who know what it is to lose. Comment how you think this story will end, and if you haven't subscribed yet, it costs you nothing, but for us, it means the world. Thank you for being here. Matthew Miller walked through the rusty gate of St. Jude's home like someone crossing the door of an unimportant boardroom. 43 years old, Italian suit cut to perfection, shiny shoes that cost more than the monthly salary of the orphanage director. His face was that of a man who had never lost a negotiation, never begged for anything, never needed to look down to find his own humanity. The air smelled like cheap disinfectant, mixed with reheated vegetable soup. The walls of the building, painted a yellow that once wanted to be cheerful, now looked peeling and sad. A child's poster, crooked and stuck with tape, said with colorful letters, "No one is alone here." Matthew did not even look at it. Behind him walked 3 executives with leather briefcases and latest model tablets, and an image consultant who whispered instructions as if she were directing a high-budget photo shoot. 20 minutes, Matthew. Friendly smile. Handshake with the managers, photo with the kids, the check, and we leave. He did not answer. He had the phone in his right hand, eyes fixed on stock market graphs, urgent email notifications, messages from shareholders. The real world, the world of flesh and bone surrounding him, was barely an irritating background noise. At the entrance, the director waited with her hands clasped. She was a woman of about 60 years, grey hair pulled back in a simple bun, wrinkles that spoke of sleepless nights and impossible budgets. Her name was Gloria, though Matthew never asked her name. "Mr. Miller." She extended her hand with a smile she had learned to manufacture to survive politicians, regretful businessmen, and charity campaigns that had more marketing than heart. "Thank you for coming." Matthew shook her hand without strength, barely a touch of fingers, like someone touching something he would prefer to avoid. Without looking up from the phone, he asked, "How much time do I need to be here?" Gloria swallowed the humiliation. It was not the first time. It would not be the last. "Time enough to understand what we do, Mr. Miller." He let out a sound between a laugh and contempt. "Understanding, I understand. What I do not have is a schedule. Let's go straight to the point." They walked through a narrow hallway where child drawings, smiling suns, houses with chimneys, families holding hands, competed with the old cracks in the walls. At the end of the corridor, a glass door led to the interior patio. The March sun entered shyly, lighting a small space where some children played soccer with a deflated ball. Others were sitting in small groups, drawing, talking in low voices, with that mix of curiosity and fear that only someone who has been abandoned knows. Matthew moved forward as if he were walking through an empty stage, but then he saw her. Sitting on the ground with legs crossed was an 11-year-old girl. She had brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, a grey sweatshirt several sizes too big, and in front of her an old toolbox and a gutted laptop. Her fingers moved with surgical precision among cables, circuits, and tiny pieces. She did not look up when Matthew passed by her side. She was too concentrated on bringing something dead back to life. "That is Lucy," Gloria said, noticing that Matthew had slowed his pace barely half a second. "She fixes the donated computers. She has a special gift." Matthew speeded up again as if nothing had happened. That girl for him was part of the decor, a detail. One more object in the orphanage inventory. Gloria tried one more time. "Our children have incredible talents, Mr. Miller, if they had real opportunities." Matthew took a checkbook from the inner pocket of his jacket. He opened it with a mechanical movement, without looking at the amount, and began to write with the cold elegance of someone who signs million-dollar contracts. "Opportunity costs money, Madam Director, and I am giving." His voice was flat, without emotion. Talent without opportunity is only wasted potential. The sound of the pen scratching the paper seemed to fill the whole patio. Then Lucy raised her eyes, and she looked at him like someone who detects an error in a code. "Wasted potential is ignoring a bug when you have it in front of your nose," she said with a quiet voice without effort. The executives let out nervous laughs, as if it were a funny scene that should be edited later. Matthew stopped. He turned slowly, with that gesture of automatic condescension he used with incompetent employees. "Excuse me," the girl pointed to the phone in his hand. "That app you just opened. Your security system has the certificate poorly configured. Traffic can be intercepted with a basic man-in-the-middle attack. Whoever set that up does not know what they are doing." The laughs of the executives grew. One commented, "Look at that. We have a hacker here." Matthew made a dismissive gesture with his hand. "Child, I have the best cybersecurity engineers in the USA. You have no idea of—" The phone vibrated. Then it vibrated again and again. In a matter of seconds, it was not just his. The phones of all the executives began to ring at the same time. Cascading notifications, alarms, a rain of warnings that transformed the whole patio into an electronic symphony of panic. The image consultant turned pale as a ghost. "Matthew, something is happening." The assistant ran towards him with a frantic face. "Sir, we are under attack. Ransomware in the central servers. It is encrypting everything, everything. They left a message. They ask for 50 million in Bitcoin." The world stopped. For the first time in years, Matthew Miller felt that the ground under his feet was not solid. Matthew ripped the phone from the assistant's hands as if he wanted to strangle him. The screen showed something he had never seen. The logo of his company distorted, pixelated, transformed into a sinister caricature. Below, a countdown in red numbers, 5:58:42. And a phrase in white letters over a black background that seemed written with digital blood. "You have 6 hours, or you lose everything. Customer data, international contracts, secret patents, projects in development, 3 years of work, and billions of dollars at risk." "How the hell did this happen?" Matthew growled, squeezing the phone with so much strength that his knuckles turned white. The assistant stammered, "We don't know, sir. The defense systems didn't detect anything until it was already inside. It's like as if they knew exactly where to attack." Matthew felt how his stomach fell into the void. It wasn't just an attack. It was a public humiliation. It was the demonstration that the empire he had built with arrogance and coldness could crumble in a matter of hours. "Call New York, now. I want the whole IT team online. I want the head of security. I want the cyber police. I want everyone." They entered a small room of the orphanage, a kind of improvised office with a scratched plastic table and mismatched chairs. The executives, who minutes before laughed with superiority, now looked like scared mice. Matthew walked back and forth with jaw tight, hands shaking slightly though he tried to hide it. 10 minutes, 20, 30. A video call connected. The head of IT security, a man of 40 years with deep dark circles and a face of not having slept in days, appeared on screen. "Mr. Miller," his voice trembled, "we have no way to reverse this. They are using military-grade AES-256 encryption. If we continue like this, in 1 hour, we will have lost total access, and if they leak the data, the company ends." Matthew hit the table with so much strength that a plastic cup rolled and fell to the floor. "Impossible, impossible. I'm not going to pay 50 million to any damn criminal." "Then," the head's voice wavered, "then prepare for the worst, sir." The silence that fell over the room was so dense, it seemed solid. The executives looked at each other without knowing what to do. The image consultant typed frantically on her phone, probably preparing a crisis statement that no one wanted to read. Matthew felt something he had not felt in years. Fear. Not financial fear. Not fear of losing money. It was the fear of discovering that after all he had control of nothing. It was then when a small voice from the half-open door cut the tension like a sharp knife. "I can go in." Everyone turned at the same time. Lucy was there with a wrench still in her hand, as if she had simply walked through the hallway and found a group of adults playing at despair. Matthew narrowed his eyes. "What are you doing here?" "The same as you," she answered calmly, trying to avoid disaster. One of the executives let out a nervous laugh. "This is serious, child." Lucy pointed toward the laptop open on the table, where lines of incomprehensible code blinked. "I recognize that pattern. It is not common ransomware. It is an old variant they are using because it is fast, but—" She tilted her head slightly. "Whoever wrote this left a back door. It is the type of error someone makes when they are in a hurry or when they are arrogant." Matthew felt how his throat dried. "Are you saying that you can—" "I am saying that you are running in circles." He approached her, with face hardened, voice sharp like broken glass. "This is a company. It is not a little game. You have no idea of what is at risk." Lucy raised her eyes and answered without blinking. "I know exactly what is at risk. And you do too. Only you don't know what to do." For a second, Matthew wanted to kick her out of the room. The anger was not against her. It was against the humiliation, against the impotence, against the universe that dared to place him in that position, needing a child. But he had no options. He breathed deep. 3 minutes, he said, as if he were granting a favor. "If you fail, you go back to the patio and you don't open your mouth again." Lucy did not answer. She simply sat in front of the laptop. And then her world appeared. Lucy's fingers flew over the keyboard with a speed that seemed impossible for an 11-year-old girl. Command lines appeared and disappeared, files opened and closed, logs sprouted like fireworks on the black screen. The executives tried to follow the rhythm and failed. Matthew, for the first time in all his adult life, stayed in absolute silence. Gloria, the director, watched from the door with a mix of pride and sadness. She had seen Lucy grow in that place. She had seen how the girl spent nights awake, lit only by the blue light of old computers, learning alone what others needed years of university to understand. And now she saw her saving a man who didn't even look at her as a person. 2 minutes passed. Matthew's heart beat so hard he could hear it in his ears. Lucy stopped for half a second. She bit her lower lip, that unconscious gesture she made when she concentrated to the maximum. And then she wrote one last line of code. Enter. The screens blinked. The red alert disappeared. The system responded with a soft beep, almost musical. The files reappeared one by one, like stars lighting up in a night sky. The folders came back. The servers woke from death. The assistant shouted from his phone, "It's back! My God, it's back! It's all here!" The head of security, in the video call, stayed mute, with mouth open like a fish out of water. Matthew looked at the screen without being able to believe what he saw. The counter had disappeared. The threatening message had been erased. Everything had returned to normality, as if someone had blown air into a dead body. The silence in the room was so absolute that one could hear the wind moving the leaves of the trees outside. Matthew approached slowly, as if walking on broken glass. "How?" Lucy shrugged naturally. The back door was hidden in a verification function. They tried to look cool and forgot the basics. "I just used the bug against them." Matthew stayed looking at her. Not as a number in a balance, not as a piece of a charity campaign, not as a social case. For the first time, he really looked. The brown eyes, the furrowed brow, the way she held the wrench as if it were an extension of her own body, and that gesture of biting the lower lip when she concentrated. Matthew's heart skipped a beat. A memory flashed through his mind like lightning. A woman in California, years ago, identical eyes, and that same unconscious gesture. Matthew felt that the world tilted under his feet. "What?" he swallowed with difficulty. "What is your full name?" Lucy observed him with a calm that did not belong to her age. "Lucy Miller Martinez." The air left Matthew's lungs at once. "Miller?" Gloria, the director, opened her mouth to explain, confused by the reaction, but Lucy was faster. "My mother died when I was 4 years old. They told me my father was someone important, someone who didn't want to know anything about me." Matthew felt his legs weaken. 9 years ago. A brief meeting. A cold goodbye. A pregnancy resolved with money and silence. He remembered the call he had received. He remembered the name. He remembered the fear of becoming a newspaper headline. He remembered having chosen his career above everything. He remembered having fled like a coward. His voice broke. I searched. You didn't search, she cut, without raising her voice. Every syllable was a death sentence. Matthew blinked rapidly, trying to contain what rose from his chest. I didn't know that. You knew enough to ignore it, Lucy interrupted. He felt something break inside, not with noise, but with a silent and deep pain. Lucy put her hand in the pocket of her sweatshirt and took out a folded paper, old, wrinkled. She opened it with care and showed it to him. It was a photograph of Matthew. A photo of him in a business magazine, cut out and kept in a worn school file. I did facial recognition when I was 9 years old, she said, as if commenting that she learned to tie her shoes. I wanted to know who the man was who abandoned me. Shame hit Matthew like a punch in the stomach. He took a step back, with throat tight, eyes burning. Lucy, he whispered, almost without voice. She did not turn her gaze away. She did not back down. She did not smile. And then Matthew Miller, the man who dominated companies, markets, and headlines, fell to his knees. The executives held their breath. Gloria took her hand to her mouth. Tears rolled down Matthew's face before he could stop them. I am, he tried to speak. I am my father, Lucy completed. I know. Matthew closed his eyes for a second, as if the word had crushed his chest. Please, he said with a broken voice, give me a chance. Just one. I was a coward. I was a monster. But if you allow me, I will spend the rest of my life trying to be someone who deserves to be near you. Lucy breathed deep. Her gaze trembled for an instant, and in that instant, Matthew saw something she was trying to hide with all her strength. A shy hope, wounded, almost forbidden. But she did not give in easy, because abandoned children do not learn to trust. They learn to survive. Lucy wiped her grease-stained hand on her sweatshirt and spoke low, as if dictating a rule. Then prove it. Matthew lowered his head, as if receiving a sacred verdict. I will prove it. The following days were the most difficult of Matthew Miller's life, not because of business, not because of meetings, but because every gesture, every word, every decision had a weight he had never felt before. He hired the best lawyers to start the paternity recognition process. He signed papers with shaking hands. He spoke with judges. He gave explanations that burned his throat. But the hardest part was facing Lucy's gaze every time he visited her. The girl had been moved to a temporary apartment near the orphanage, with a guardian appointed by the court, while the legal procedures were resolved. Matthew went every afternoon after work, with a punctuality his employees didn't recognize in him. He arrived with empty hands because Lucy had made it clear she didn't want gifts. You don't buy me with things, she had told him the second time he tried to bring her a new laptop. If you want to prove something, prove it with time. So Matthew arrived, sat on the old sofa of the apartment and simply was there. At first, Lucy ignored him. She sat on the other end of the room, with her programming books, her cables and circuits, building her own world while he remained in silence. But little by little, something began to change. One afternoon, Lucy was working on a robotics project when a piece fell and rolled to Matthew's feet. He picked it up, observed it with curiosity, and gave it back without saying anything. It's a servo motor, Lucy said, almost without wanting to. For a robotic arm. Matthew nodded, though he understood nothing. Does it work? It will work when I finish calibrating it. He stayed watching her work, the precision of her movements, the concentration on her face, and that gesture of biting the lower lip. You look a lot like your mother, he whispered without thinking. Lucy stopped. Her hands stayed still on the table. Don't talk about her as if you had known her. I knew her. Matthew lowered his gaze. Not as I should have known her, not as she deserved, but I knew her. Lucy clenched her jaw. And why didn't we stay together then? The question floated in the air like glass about to break. Matthew took time to answer. When he did, his voice was barely a whisper. Because I was afraid of changing, afraid of failing, afraid of being less important. I chose my career, my company, my ego, and I let go of the only thing that really mattered. Lucy looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time Matthew saw something different in her eyes. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps understanding. Fear is not an excuse, she said. I know, Matthew answered. That is why I am here, to show you that I can be more than my fear. The weeks passed and the routine was established. Matthew began to arrive earlier, sometimes with prepared food, because he discovered that Lucy only ate sandwiches and cereal. He learned to cook omelets following internet tutorials, and although the first one was burnt and the second one raw, the third one was edible. Lucy did not say thank you, but she ate it all. One night, while they ate in silence, she spoke. Why do you keep coming? Matthew left the fork on the plate. Because you are my daughter, and because I lost 11 years, I am not going to lose one more day. I am not a rescue project, she said with hardness. No, he answered. You're the most important person in my life, even if you don't believe me yet. Lucy studied him for a long moment. Then she went back to eating, but something in her posture was different, less rigid, less closed. 2 months after the meeting at the orphanage, Matthew took Lucy to his company for the first time. Not as a charity visit, as his daughter. The employees looked at them with curiosity as they walked through the glass and steel hallways of the building. Some whispered. Others pretended not to look. Everyone knew who Matthew Miller was, but no one knew who the 11-year-old girl was walking by his side with a worn backpack and old sneakers. Matthew ignored them all. Only she mattered to him. He took her directly to the technology department, where 30 engineers worked on projects worth millions. When they entered, everyone stood up automatically, with that rigidity that fear disguised as respect causes. Sit down, Matthew ordered. I want to introduce you to someone. He put a soft hand on Lucy's shoulder. She tensed for a moment but didn't move away. This is Lucy, my daughter, and starting today, she will have complete access to all our development systems. I want you to learn from her as much as she will learn from you. The silence that followed was dense, loaded with poorly disguised disbelief. A senior engineer, a man of about 50 years with grey beard and thick glasses, spoke with caution. Mr. Miller. Your daughter. My daughter, Matthew repeated with firmness. Any problem? No, sir. None. But Matthew saw the looks, the doubt, the skepticism, and something more dangerous, the barely hidden contempt toward a child who did not fit in that world of university degrees and impressive resumes. Lucy also saw it, but she said nothing. She simply sat in front of one of the workstations and opened a command terminal. During the next hour, while the engineers tried to solve a code optimization problem that had been stuck for days, Lucy worked in silence. Her fingers flew over the keyboard with that speed and precision that were already her personal mark. When she finished, she turned the screen toward the team. The problem is here, she pointed to a specific line. You are using a linear search algorithm when you should be using a balanced binary tree. That is why the performance degrades with large datasets. The senior engineer approached, adjusting his glasses. He read the code, he frowned, he read again, and then his expression changed completely. My God, she is right. The others crowded around the screen. Exclamations of surprise filled the room. Someone ran the corrected code, and the results were immediate. The processing time was reduced by 70%. Matthew felt something strange in his chest. Pride. A pride different from anything he had felt before. It wasn't pride for a closed deal or a bought company. It was pride for her, for what she was, for what she could do. And when Lucy looked at him out of the corner of her eye, unconsciously searching for his approval, Matthew saw something that made him hold his breath. The beginning of a shy smile at the corners of her lips. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a step. The visits to the company became regular. Lucy began to work with the cybersecurity team 3 afternoons a week, after her regular classes in a private school that Matthew had carefully selected. Not the most expensive nor the most prestigious, but the one that had the best science and technology program. But what really mattered happened in the small moments, like that afternoon when Lucy arrived at the apartment with contained tears in her eyes. She sat on the sofa without saying a word, hugging her backpack as if it were a shield. Matthew, who had arrived earlier to prepare dinner, saw her from the kitchen. His instinct was to ask, to press, to fix the problem as he fixed everything in his professional life. But he held back. Instead of that, he finished cooking in silence. He prepared 2 plates of pasta with tomato sauce, nothing fancy but made with care, and took them to the room. He sat next to her, leaving enough space so she wouldn't feel invaded. "Do you want to talk?" he asked softly. Lucy shook her head. "It's okay," he said. "I am here if you change your mind." They ate in silence for several minutes. The sound of forks against plates was the only thing that filled the space. Then Lucy spoke without looking up. "Today some kids at school said that I am only there because my father is rich, that I don't deserve to be in that school, that I am an imposter." Matthew felt a wave of anger rise through his throat. He wanted names. He wanted to call the director. He wanted to destroy whoever had hurt his daughter. But he breathed deep and chose his words with care. "What do you believe?" She looked at him, surprised by the question. "What? Do you believe you're an imposter?" Lucy clenched her jaw. "No, I work harder than any of them. Then that is the only thing that matters." Matthew interrupted softly. "Not what others say. Not where you come from. Only what you do with what you have." Lucy observed him for a long moment, searching in his face for some sign of falsehood, some crack in his words. But she only found sincerity. "Do you really believe that?" she asked with a small voice. "Yes," answered Matthew. "And if I could go back, I would say that same thing to the man I was 11 years ago, that what matters is not money, nor power, nor titles. What matters is being present for the people you love." The tears Lucy had been containing finally flowed. They were not dramatic sobs. They were silent tears that rolled down her cheeks while she tried to maintain composure. Matthew slowly extended his hand, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She did not pull away. When his hand touched Lucy's shoulder, the girl collapsed. She turned toward him, and for the first time since they had reunited, she let herself be hugged. Matthew held her as if she were the most fragile and precious thing in the universe. He felt her tears soak his shirt. He felt how her small body trembled with 11 years of stored pain, and he cried with her, not out of pity, not out of guilt, but because finally, after 11 years of emptiness, he was holding his daughter. The months that followed were of deep changes. Matthew Miller, the man who had built his empire on the basis of 18-hour meetings and weekends in the office, did something his employees considered impossible. He set limits. Every Friday at 5 in the afternoon, without exceptions, he closed the laptop in the middle of whatever he was doing, ignored calls from shareholders, and turned off the phone. Because there was something more important waiting for him. His secretary, an efficient woman who had been with him for 10 years, looked at him with a mix of wonder and joy every time she saw him running out at that hour. "It is as if he were another person," she commented one day to the vice president. "He is a father," he answered, smiling. Finally, he is a father. In the company, the changes were also evident. Matthew began to ask his employees about their families. He implemented flexible hour policies for fathers and mothers. He established a scholarship program for children of employees who wanted to study technology careers. "What happened to you, Matthew?" an old partner asked him during a business meal. "Before you were a shark. Now you seem human." Matthew smiled, looking at the photo of Lucy he now had in his wallet. "I discovered that being a shark is worth nothing if you swim alone in the ocean." The afternoons with Lucy became the center of his life. Some days they worked together on programming projects, with her teaching him things he had never really understood. Other days they simply walked through the park, ate ice cream, talked about science fiction and robots. Little by little, the barrier between them was crumbling. Lucy began to call him Matthew instead of Mr. Miller. Then one day, while they worked on a particularly difficult code, she let slip without thinking, "Pass me that cable, Dad." She stopped short with eyes very open, as if she had revealed a secret. Matthew felt his heart stop. "What did you say?" Lucy blushed, looking away. "Nothing. An error." "No." Matthew approached, with voice broken with emotion. "It was not an error. Say it again, please." She looked at him with eyes shining, fighting against years of pain and abandonment. "Dad," she whispered finally. Matthew hugged her so hard he feared hurting her, but she did not pull away. On the contrary, she hugged him too, burying her face in his chest. "I love you, Lucy," he said with tears rolling down his face. "I love you more than words can express, and I will spend every day of the rest of my life showing you that you deserve that love." "I know," she answered with a trembling but sure voice. "You are already showing it." 6 months after the cyber attack that had reunited them, Matthew made a decision his advisors considered professional suicide, making the story public. He organized a press conference in the main auditorium of his company. 100 journalists, TV cameras, photographer flashes, the whole business world pending on his words. Lucy was sitting in the front row, wearing a new blouse, but with her favorite old sneakers. Matthew had asked her if she wanted to be there, giving her the option to refuse. But she had answered, "If we are going to do this, we do it together." Matthew climbed the podium, adjusted the microphone and breathed deep. 6 months ago, my company suffered the worst cyber attack in its history. We were about to lose everything. The best engineers in the USA could not stop it. He paused, searching for Lucy's eyes. The person who stopped it was an 11-year-old girl, a girl who lived in an orphanage, a girl that his voice broke slightly, a girl that I abandoned when she was born. The murmur among the journalists was instant. Cameras turned, pens flew over notebooks. Matthew continued, "Lucy Miller Martinez is my daughter, and for 11 years, out of cowardice, out of selfishness, for prioritizing my career over my humanity, I left her alone. She grew up without a father, without support, without the opportunities I could have given her." Tears began to roll down his cheeks, but he did not wipe them. "And yet, when I had the chance to meet her, she saved me. Not just me, but my whole company. She saved me from financial ruin, but more importantly, she saved me from continuing to be the monster I had become." He turned toward Lucy, extending his hand. She stood up and walked toward the stage. Some journalists clapped spontaneously. Others simply observed, with tears in their eyes. When Lucy reached his side, Matthew hugged her in front of all the cameras. "This is my daughter," he said with pride. "The smartest, bravest, and most generous person I know. And if there is anything I'm proud of in this life, it is not any company or any contract. It is her. Only her." The flashes exploded like stars. Questions rained from all directions. But Matthew only had eyes for Lucy, and she, for the first time since he had found her, smiled at him with total sincerity. The days following the press conference were a media hurricane. News was replicated on every channel, in every newspaper, in every corner of the internet. The image of Matthew Miller kneeling before his daughter became viral, with millions of people giving opinions on their story. Some cheered him. "An example of bravery and redemption," titled a progressive newspaper. "When success makes you forget what is important, but you have the courage to rectify," said another. But others destroyed him without mercy. "Hypocrite seeks to wash his image," proclaimed social networks. 11 years of abandonment are not erased with a conference, wrote indignant columnists. Where was he when his daughter needed him? They asked with reason. Matthew read every criticism, every insult, every accusation. He forced himself to read them all without skipping any, as a self-imposed penance. One night, while they ate dinner in the apartment that was now their shared home, Lucy found him with the laptop open, reading social media comments. His face was pale, jaw tight. "What are you doing?" she asked, leaving her plate on the table. "Reading what they say." "Why?" Lucy sat by his side. "To torture yourself?" Matthew closed his eyes for a moment. Because they are right, Lucy. I deserve every hard word they write, every insult, every accusation. Stop, she interrupted firmly, closing the laptop. Do you know what the difference is between you and most of those people who criticize you from their keyboards? What? That you are here. Lucy pointed to the space between them. You are not defending yourself on TV. You are not hiring PR teams to clean your image. You are not writing corporate statements. You are here with me, eating pizza on a Friday night when you could be at any important gala saving your reputation. Matthew felt a knot in his throat. There is no place in the world I would rather be. I know, she said, and in her voice there was a new softness. And believe me, Dad, that is the only thing that matters. Not what strangers on the internet say. What matters is that when I wake up scared at 3 in the morning, you are here. That when I have a problem with homework, you try to help even if you understand nothing. That when I need silence, you sit by my side without saying a word. Tears began to roll down Matthew's face. I am so afraid of failing you again. Then fail, Lucy said, taking his hand. Make mistakes, get it wrong, but stay. That is all I need, that you stay. Matthew hugged her, burying his face in her hair, and cried as he had not cried since that first day at the orphanage. Not out of guilt, not out of shame, but out of gratitude, for the miracle of a second chance that he did not deserve but that he would treasure with every fiber of his being. But the consequences were not only media-related. 3 days later, the board of directors of the company called an emergency meeting. The email arrived at 6 in the morning with the subject marked as Urgent, Extraordinary Board Meeting. Matthew knew immediately it would not be an easy conversation. The boardroom was on the 42nd floor, with large windows offering panoramic views of the city. 12 people were sitting around a mahogany table that cost more than a luxury car, vice presidents, division directors, main shareholders, all with impeccable suits and expressions that mixed concern, disapproval, and something that seemed dangerously close to fear. The vice president, Frank Ross, a man of 60 years, who had been with Matthew since the beginnings of the company, spoke first with a grave tone. Matthew, thanks for coming. I know this is delicate, but we have to talk about your personal situation and how it is affecting the company. It is not a situation, Matthew answered firmly, even before sitting down. It is my daughter. A woman from the board, Patricia Mendoza, financial director, intervened with a controlled voice. We understand, Matthew, and no one here questions your right to have a personal life. But the numbers are clear. Since your press conference, stocks have fallen 12%. Investors are nervous. There are rumors in the market that you could be distracted from your responsibilities, that your focus is no longer on the company. Distracted? Matthew let out a bitter laugh. Are you worried that I am distracted? Matthew. Frank tried to calm him, but Matthew stood up, walking toward the window with hands in his pockets. Let me tell you something. Before, when I worked 80, 90 hours a week, when I sacrificed everything for this company, when I didn't sleep thinking about contracts and acquisitions, when I saw people as resources and problems as opportunities, were we more successful? Well, Frank admitted with caution. In terms of aggressive growth, yes. In numbers, yes. Matthew turned toward them. In real value? No. Do you know how many employees we lost to burnout in the last 5 years? How many divorces? How many families destroyed because they followed my example of working until collapse? Patricia frowned. Those are collateral effects of corporate success. No. Matthew's voice was hard as steel. They are symptoms of a sick system that I perpetuated. I built this company on the basis of destroying competition, of squeezing employees until the last drop, of seeing people as numbers on a spreadsheet, and I almost lost the only thing that really matters in this life. He approached the table, leaning hands on the polished surface. Now I have something to work for that goes beyond money. I have purpose. I have a daughter who reminds me every day that success without humanity is only vanity in disguise. And if you think that makes me less effective, then maybe you are in the wrong board. The silence that followed was dense, almost palpable. The members of the board looked at each other, some with surprise, others with something that looked like respect. Frank was the one who broke the silence. He reclined in his chair, a slow smile appearing on his tired face. "Damn, Matthew. That is the first completely honest answer I have heard from you in 20 years of working together." Patricia cleared her throat, adjusting her glasses. "I understand your point, but pragmatically speaking, we need to address the drop in stocks. Investors want results," Matthew interrupted, "and I am going to give them. But in a different way, I am going to prove to them that a company can be profitable and human at the same time, that we don't have to choose between success and decency." "How?" asked another board member, a young man named Richard. Matthew breathed deep, knowing that what he was about to propose would change everything. "I am going to implement a new corporate policy. Real flexible hours, not just on paper. Free psychological support for all employees and their families. Daycares in the offices. Extended parental leave for fathers and mothers alike. And we are going to dedicate 5% of our annual profits to technology education programs for children without resources." 5%? Patricia almost choked. "That is millions of dollars." "I know," Matthew smiled, "and it will be the best investment we ever make. The shareholders are going to—" "The shareholders," Matthew interrupted calmly, "are going to see that when you treat people like human beings, they work better. They innovate more, they stay longer, they take care of the company as if it were their own. And in the end, that translates into greater benefits. Not immediate, not in the next quarter, but sustainable in the long term." Frank rubbed his chin, thoughtful. "It's risky. I know. It might not work. Or it could revolutionize the whole industry," Matthew replied. "Look, I understand your concerns. I really do. But I can no longer lead this company with the same principles that almost destroyed my life. Either we change together, or I leave and you find someone else. But I'm not going back to being the man I was." The silence extended. Matthew could see the wheels turning in the minds of every member of the board. He was gambling everything: his position, his company, his professional legacy. But for the first time in his life, that did not terrify him, because he had something more important waiting for him at home. Finally, Frank stood up and extended his hand. "You have our support, Matthew, but with one condition." "What?" "Don't let those stocks keep falling. Prove to us that your new philosophy works. You have 6 months." Matthew shook the hand firmly. "I won't need that long." The implementation of the changes was chaotic at first. There was resistance from old managers who saw the new policies as corporate weakness. There were skeptical employees who thought it was just another PR strategy that would disappear in weeks. But Matthew persisted, and gradually something extraordinary began to happen. Employees who now could leave early to pick up their children at school returned to work with renewed energy. Those who received psychological support reported lower stress and higher productivity. Mothers and fathers who used the new daycares did not have to choose between their career and their family. And the numbers, slowly but inexorably, began to improve. But while the company was transforming, Matthew faced his most personal battle, completely winning his daughter's heart. One afternoon, a month after the press conference, Lucy arrived at the apartment with red eyes and her backpack dragging on the floor. She dropped onto the sofa without a word. Matthew, who was in the kitchen preparing dinner, watched her with concern. His instinct screamed at him to ask, to press, to solve the problem immediately, as he did with everything in his professional life. But he had learned that with Lucy, things worked differently. He finished cooking in silence. He prepared 2 plates of chicken and rice, nothing fancy but made with love, and took them to the room. He sat next to her, leaving enough space so as not to invade her. They ate in silence for several minutes. Only the sound of cutlery against plates filled the space. Then Lucy spoke without looking up. "Today at school some kids found the video of your press conference. They passed it around on their phones during break. They laughed. They said that—" Her voice broke. "They said that I am only in that school because my father is rich, that I don't deserve to be there, that I am an imposter who was rescued from the trash." Matthew felt a wave of fury so intense he had to close his fists to control it. He wanted names. He wanted last names. He wanted to call the director and demand expulsions. He wanted to protect his daughter from all the pain in the world. But he breathed deep and chose his words with the care of someone deactivating a bomb. "What do you believe?" She looked at him, surprised by the question. "What? Do you believe you are an imposter? Do you believe you don't deserve to be in that school?" Lucy clenched her jaw, tears threatening to overflow. "I don't know. Sometimes I feel like all this is a dream, that I am going to wake up and I will still be in the orphanage, fixing old computers, without anyone who—" "Look at me," Matthew said softly, waiting until she raised her eyes. "Listen to me well, because this is the most important thing I'm going to tell you. Your value does not come from me. It does not come from my money. It does not come from my last name. Your value was there long before I appeared. You saved a company when the best engineers in the USA failed. You did it alone at 11 years old with only your mind and your talent." Tears began to roll down Lucy's cheeks. "But if I hadn't appeared, eventually someone else would have recognized your genius. Maybe later, maybe in a harder way. But your talent does not need me to exist." Matthew took her hands softly. "The only thing I gave you was the chance to show it faster. But you, Lucy, you were always extraordinary." She sobbed, finally allowing herself to release the pain she had been keeping. "I feel like a fraud, as if I didn't deserve any of this." "That is called imposter syndrome," Matthew explained. "And believe me, even the most successful CEOs feel it. I felt it for years, but the difference is that you didn't get here because of contacts or inheritance. You got here by your own merit. I only want to make sure you have all the tools to go as far as you want to go." Lucy wiped her tears with the back of her hand, that gesture so hers that always broke Matthew's heart. "And what if one day I disappoint everyone? You?" "Impossible," he answered without hesitating. "You could quit programming tomorrow and dedicate yourself to gardening, and I would still be the proudest father in the world, because my pride does not come from what you do, but from who you are. A child who survived things that would break most adults. A child who, despite everything, kept her kindness, her intelligence, her capacity to forgive." "I am not sure I have forgiven," Lucy whispered. "Sometimes I still get angry. Sometimes I look at you and remember the 11 years you weren't there, and I get so angry I want to scream at you. But then you do something like prepare dinner or help me with homework, and the anger mixes with love," Matthew completed softly. She nodded, more tears sprouting. "And that scares me, because loving means being able to lose. And I already lost my mother. I don't know if I could survive losing you too." Matthew hugged her then, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the universe. "You are not going to lose me, Lucy. I promise you. You can get angry with me. You can scream at me. You can hate me some days. And I will still be here. Because that is what true love does. It doesn't run when things get difficult. It stays, always." They remained like that for what seemed an eternity, in the sacred silence of forgiveness that is built not in a moment, but in thousands of small, accumulated moments. When they finally separated, Lucy had swollen eyes, but something in her expression had changed. She was lighter, freer. "Thanks, Dad." And that word, Dad, pronounced with such naturalness, with such confidence, was the biggest gift Matthew had ever received. The following months were of deep transformation. The company not only recovered, but prospered in ways that defied all traditional corporate logic. Employees who now left on time to be with their families returned the next day with renewed energy and genuine loyalty. Staff turnover fell to historic levels. Stories about the new corporate culture spread, and brilliant young talents who before would have chosen Silicon Valley companies now wanted to work for Matthew Miller. Patricia Mendoza, the financial director, who had been so skeptical, entered Matthew's office one day with a folder under her arm and an expression of genuine wonder. "I don't understand it," she said, leaving the quarterly report on the desk. By all the laws of traditional economics I studied, this shouldn't work. We spend millions on benefits for employees. We dedicate 5% of net profits to social programs. We reduced work hours. And yet, we are more profitable than ever, Matthew completed, a calm smile on his face. The stocks not only recovered the drop, they rose an additional 23%. Patricia sat down, still incredulous. Analysts are calling it the Miller model. They want to know how you did it. Matthew reclined in his chair, looking through the window toward the city. I didn't do anything revolutionary, Patricia. I only stopped seeing people as resources and started seeing them as what they are. Human beings with families, dreams, fears. It turns out that when you treat people with dignity, they give you the best of themselves, not by obligation, by choice. Patricia shook her head, smiling. I am deeply glad to have been wrong about you. But the true miracle did not reside in corporate numbers, nor in press articles. It was in the small moments that filled Matthew's life with a meaning he had never known. Like Fridays at 5 in the afternoon, when without exception he closed the laptop, even if he was in the middle of an important video conference, and crossed the city to get home. His secretary, Mary, had stopped scheduling meetings after that hour. The vice presidents had learned that last-minute emergencies would have to wait until Monday. Does it never tempt you to stay? Frank asked him one afternoon. Do you never feel that you are losing opportunities? Matthew smiled, packing his things. I lost 11 years of opportunities with my daughter. I am not going to lose one more minute. The months turned into a year, then into 2. Lucy grew not only in age, but in confidence, in security, in the certainty that she was loved unconditionally. There were difficult days, of course, afternoons when the emotional scars of her first 11 years emerged without warning, nights when nightmares about abandonment woke her shaking, moments when anxiety paralyzed her and made her question if she deserved all she now had. In those moments, Matthew did not try to fix things with quick solutions or empty words. He was simply present. He sat next to her in silence when words were not enough. He held her when she needed to be held. He reminded her, with infinite patience, that true love does not run from pain, but goes through it with you. One particularly difficult night when Lucy was 15 years old, she had a panic attack. Matthew found her in the bathroom, hyperventilating, with tears rolling down her face. I can't breathe, she gasped. Dad, I can't. Look at me, he said calmly, kneeling in front of her. Breathe with me. Inhale for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They breathed together for 10 minutes until the panic decreased. Then Matthew took her to the room, wrapped her in a blanket and sat by her side. Do you want to talk? He asked softly. Lucy took time to answer, staring fixedly at the wall. Sometimes I am afraid that this is not real, that I will wake up and you won't be there, that all has been an elaborate dream that my brain created to survive. Matthew felt his heart break. I am here. I am real. This is real. But what if one day you realize that I am too damaged, too complicated, too broken? He took her face between his hands with infinite tenderness. Lucy, listen to me. You are not broken. You are wounded. And there is a huge difference. Broken people cannot be repaired, but wounded people can heal. And I am going to be here in every step of that healing. Not because it is my obligation, but because you are my daughter, and I love you with every fiber of my being. And what if I never heal completely? Then we will live with those scars together. His voice was firm, without hesitation. Love is not only for the good days, Lucy. It is especially for days like this, for nights of panic, for moments of doubt, for when the world feels too heavy. That is when it matters most that someone stays. Lucy collapsed in his arms, crying years of contained pain, and Matthew held her, whispering promises he knew he would keep until his last breath. Time followed its course, weaving a net of ordinary moments that became extraordinary because of the love they were lived with. Hurried breakfast before school, afternoons studying together, with Matthew trying to help with calculus and Lucy laughing at his failed attempts. movie nights on the sofa, with Lucy choosing science documentaries and Matthew pretending to understand everything while secretly falling asleep. And then there were the special moments, like when Lucy won her first national programming competition at 16 years old. Matthew was in the front row, with a handmade sign that said, "That's my daughter," in giant and disproportionate letters that embarrassed and moved her in equal measure. Or like that afternoon when Lucy, now 17 years old, arrived home with an acceptance letter from MIT. She handed it to Matthew without a word, watching his face while he read. When he finished, Matthew looked at her with shining eyes. "MT, Lucy, it's incredible. I am so proud of you." But she was not smiling. "I am not going to go." Matthew blinked, confused. "What? Why not?" "Because it is in the USA, far from you, and I don't want—" Her voice broke. "I don't want to be far, not yet." Matthew felt a wave of love so intense he had to sit down. "Lucy, listen to me well. I will be here always, wherever you go, wherever you study. MIT is an incredible opportunity. You cannot reject it for me." "It's not just for you," she admitted, sitting by his side. "It's for us, for what we built. I'm afraid that if I leave, this will break, that the distance—" "Distance cannot break what is really strong," Matthew interrupted softly. "And ours, my girl, is unbreakable. Besides," he smiled, "do you think I am going to miss your conferences or your achievements? I will take the first plane every time you need me." Lucy looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Really? Really? Your place is where your talent can flourish, and my place is supporting you in every step. That doesn't change for a few thousand miles." In the end, Lucy decided to stay in the USA one more year, not out of fear, but because she wanted to finish a project with the technology center that bore her name. She wanted to see the first generation of children who had gone through the program graduate. She wanted to make sure her legacy was firmly established before leaving. And Matthew respected her decision, because he had learned that loving is not controlling but trusting. The night before Lucy turned 18, Matthew could not sleep. At 3 in the morning he got up, walked through the apartment that was now full of photographs of both, at the opening of the center, at conferences in simple Sunday afternoons, and stopped in front of her bedroom door. The desk light was still on. As always, Lucy was working on some project. The sound of the keyboard was like familiar music. Matthew knocked softly on the door. "Come in," she said without turning, because she recognized his knuckles. He entered and sat on the edge of the bed, watching her work. She had grown so much. She was no longer the 11-year-old girl with clothes too big and a distrustful look. She was a young woman of almost 18, sure, brilliant, but who still bit her lower lip when she concentrated. "Can't sleep?" Lucy asked, finally turning. "I was thinking." "About what?" Matthew exhaled slowly. "About tomorrow you turn 18. Officially you will be an adult. And I wondered, how much longer will you need me?" Lucy stopped what she was doing. She got up from her chair, walked toward him, and sat on the bed by his side, taking his hand. "Dad," she said with a mix of tenderness and exasperation, "turning 18 does not mean I stop needing you. It only means that now I choose you consciously. Not because I am obligated, not because I have no other options, but because I want to, because you are the best person I know." "I am not perfect," Matthew murmured. "No one is," Lucy smiled. "But you are real. You are present. You are constant. And you are completely, absolutely mine. That is more than enough." Matthew felt the tears roll freely down his face. "Do you know what is the most ironic thing about all this? I thought I was saving you when I appeared in your life. I thought I was the rescuer, the hero of the story. But the truth is that you saved me." "We saved each other," Lucy corrected, leaning her head on his shoulder. "You gave me a family. I gave you a purpose. You taught me that it is safe to trust. I taught you that it is never too late to change. It was not a unilateral rescue. It was a mutual transformation. They stayed like that, in the sacred silence of 3 in the morning, when the deepest truths emerge, without filters or defenses." "Are you afraid of the future?" Matthew asked after a while. Always, Lucy admitted. But it is a different fear now. It is not the paralyzing fear of before. It is the normal fear of growing up, of facing the unknown. But the difference is that now I know I don't face it alone. You will never be alone, Matthew promised. Even if you are on the other side of the world, even if you spend years without seeing me, always, always, I will be a call away. Lucy raised her head to look at him. Do you know what I value most about you? What? That you have never tried to buy my love. You had the money to do it. You could have filled me with expensive gifts, luxury trips, material things. But instead of that, you gave me your time, your presence, your vulnerability. You showed me your imperfections instead of hiding them. And that, Dad, that has no price. Matthew hugged her then, feeling how his heart expanded until filling the whole room. I love you, Lucy. Beyond any word I can express, you are my greatest achievement, my greatest pride, my greatest gift. I love you too, Dad, and I am no longer afraid to say it. I am no longer afraid to feel it, because finally I understood that love is not a trap. It is a liberation. The next day, Lucy's birthday was an intimate celebration. Not an ostentatious party with hundreds of guests, but a dinner with the people who really mattered. Gloria from the orphanage, some children from the center who had become like younger siblings for Lucy, Frank and Mary from the company, and 2 of her best friends from school. After blowing out the candles, Lucy had insisted on a homemade cake that Matthew and she had baked together, resulting in a delicious disaster. Matthew handed her an envelope. It is not a material gift, he warned. It is something different. Lucy opened the envelope with care. Inside was a legal document recognizing her official legal age, but also something more, a letter written by hand by Matthew. She began to read out loud, with a trembling voice. Lucy, my girl, my salvation, my purpose. 7 years ago, I entered an orphanage as an empty man, disguised as success. I had money, power, respect. But I had nothing that really mattered. That day a girl looked at me with eyes that saw through all my defenses. A girl who saved my company, and without knowing it, saved my soul. Today, that girl becomes a woman, and I become the proudest man in the universe. Not for your academic achievements, although they are extraordinary. Not for your talents, although they are innumerable, but for your heart, for your capacity to forgive the unforgivable, for your bravery to love despite fear, for your strength to heal despite wounds. Lucy, you are my teacher, my inspiration, my reason to be better every day. And while you turn 1,000 years, while you conquer the whole world, I want you to remember this. You are loved, unconditionally, eternally, without reservations. No matter where you go, no matter what you do, no matter how many mistakes you make, you will always be my daughter. I will always have a place for you in my life, in my heart, in my home. Thanks for choosing me. Thanks for staying. Thanks for teaching me that it is never too late to do the right thing. With all my love always, Dad. When she finished reading, there was not a dry eye in the room. Gloria cried openly. Frank wiped his cheeks secretly. Lucy's friends hugged her while she sobbed. And Matthew, with tears running down his face without shame, opened his arms. Lucy threw herself toward him, hugging him with all the strength of her 18 years of life, 7 of which had been transformative. Thanks, she whispered against his chest, for staying, for changing, for loving me when I didn't even know if I deserved to be loved. You always deserved to be loved, he answered, kissing her forehead. I just had the luck of discovering it. The years continued flowing, bringing changes and constants in equal measure. Lucy finally accepted the offer from MIT at 19 years old. And as he promised, Matthew was there in every important moment. Her first international presentation, her first publication in a scientific journal, her graduation with honors. He flew to Boston every month, sometimes more. He did not send money as a substitute for presence. He himself was present. And when Lucy developed her revolutionary app for adoption systems at 21 years old, when her name began to appear on lists of most influential young people in the world, when offers from giant tech companies arrived by the dozens, journalists always asked the same thing. What is the secret of your success? And Lucy always answered in the same way, with a smile that contained whole universes. A father who chose to stay when it was easier to leave. A father who taught me that true courage is not having fear, but loving despite fear. A father who proved to me that it is never too late to become who you should have been since always. And Matthew, always present, always in the front row, always with tears of pride shining in his eyes, knew he had received a gift he did not deserve, but that he would honor until his last breath. Because in the end, when empires fall and names are forgotten, when fortunes dissipate and achievements fade in the dust of time, the only thing that really lasts is love. The love we choose to give when it would be easier to stay closed. The love we have the courage to receive when fear tells us we don't deserve it. The love we build day by day, in small and big moments. The love that transforms, that heals, that redeems. And that truth Matthew understood every day of his new life was the only legacy worth leaving. Not buildings with his name, not companies that survived centuries, but a daughter who knew, without shadow of doubt, that she was loved. That, and only that, was true wealth.